or informal. And I believe that at Sacred Harp, it is certainly more informal in nature. We don't take people aside and say, look, you must do these things in this particular order or else you're out of here. Of course, camp is a bit more formal, but it's sort of formal and informal, I suppose, if you have to label it as anything. But, so when we talk about informal orientations or initiation processes, usually still people end up with a mentor of some sort, even in a, you know, if you don't attach yourself to someone and say, you know, I'm going to follow you around like a puppy, like I do with Judy a lot of times. You at least watch that person closely for things that you like about them. And if it's not one individual, it might be several, where you say, I'm going to, you know, I notice that this person is particularly good at a thing, and I'm going to watch them, and you end up emulating them in a way, right? And imitating. Even so, you know, we have so many very good examples of what to do. Even so, you see a lot of things go awry in the square. And so that's what we're going to help, you know, try to, smooth some things out. We are not here, certainly not here to badger. We're here to aid and assist. No matter what, you know, there's a way that things are to be done. That's clear. We do have formal guidelines in the form of the rudiments, right? So we know that there are basic movements for basic time signatures, so forth and so on, and no matter what, it's going to be up and down. So even though we have, you know, a set of guidelines, we do still see a lot of variation. A lot of it is, I'm trying to be nice. and even with individuals who are doing things very much, you know, there's not a problem. We're not trying to turn them into robots. You're going to see people who are very good leaders, but are very different leaders. Isn't that true? You'll have, you know, there's a wide variation. You can take 50 different leaders and say they're all good leaders, but none of them are exactly alike. So, you know, your individuality does come through, and it's encouraged. You know, we don't want everyone to, we're not trying to make Sacred Harp robots, but just to make sure that people can follow you, and that's where I will leave it with Judy.
There's not a whole lot about leading in our rudiments. On page 16, number 12, in performance, which means at a scene, when you're standing in the square, the leader marks or beats time with hand and arm motions. Singers may also mark time, provided that they follow the leader precisely. Now, like Bridget said, we have all kinds of leaders. If you have a leader front bench that comes up here and they've got a death grip on the book and their white knuckles, they need help. So you might not want to follow them precisely. You need to help them, okay? Because this is a means of communication. You're communicating what you want to happen with your song as you're keeping time. And you need to keep time where everybody can see as best they can. There are certain spots that are kind of like blind spots, and they have a little trouble with that. So try to keep your arm up and a little bit out to the side. Gives the best view for everybody in class. So you can communicate what you want to happen with your song. Turn to page 155. Shelby used to use this song all the time when she was teaching leading. And so we're going to start with that. and be graceful and smooth in what you're doing. You don't have to move an inch out of your tracks if you don't want to. If you're comfortable, the main part of it is you get up in the square and hear all the different parts around you. That's the main thing. Then you can work into this, turn into the part, and do it smoothly, not with a jerking hand off like this. Nobody can follow you. When you're beating your time, make it a smooth up and down. If it's 3/2 or 3/4, down, down, up, not down. And you caught that last night. We all got tickled at you too. And you did a good job of recovery, okay? Down, down, up, down, down, up.
I want to talk a little about leading. Now, Cassie and Judy and others teach classes on leading and can do a much better job than I on telling you how to do and what to do. But I do have my own views and biases and some experience about that, and I'd like to share them with you. Sometimes I'm frustrated because I just love to, and I know Judy, Cassie must feel the same way. You're sitting and watching somebody who should be able to bring it home up in the square, but they don't quite, they just miss somehow. If only you'd do so and so. Two extremes make it easy for the front bench here in leading. One is the leader who knows exactly what she's doing and knows how to do it. And you've seen them here already, I'm sure. People who lead beautifully, masterfully, who are in charge. That's easy for the front bench. All they have to do is follow. The other extreme is equally easy. And the first clue is that the person who's coming to step has a death grip on the book. It's pretty clear already they're not going to be raising their hand to bring in the parts or anything. So then the front bench can just run it like they want to. And the rest of us are thankful for that, aren't we? Because we recognize too that this person, again, with all good feelings in their heart, are just scared to death. Many professional musicians, I mean, I've talked to a number over time who very skilled at what they do. They get up before a Sacred Heart group and their knees begin to. It can be intimidating. We all recognize that. And credit to those of you who are just learning to do it. The difficult thing is the area in between those two extremes. It becomes incumbent upon the front bench then to determine, do you have the ball or do we have it? Does this person know or not? And many times what you'll see at singings is the person who's leading, are they giving the beat or are they trying to follow your beat? So seasoning in the front bench area helps to determine. And if you recognize that somebody before you is just really trying to follow you rather than lead you, then you can take the assertive position on that and bring the thing home. Otherwise, you're often left with somebody who's trying to follow you, and so the song is already slower than it would be ordinarily, or whatever. Jenny Ivey has written something good. It's posted on Warren Steele's website, and I want to just read you this about the front bench responsibility. She says, watch, this is talking to the people who are taking this responsibility on of helping us get through the singing. Watch the face and eyes of the leader. If during the singing of the notes you see indications that they are not happy, try to figure out why. There are usually a variety of nonverbal signs that will help. If it's the tempo that seems wrong, catch the eye of the leader at the end of singing the notes and ask, faster or slower, or whatever seems appropriate. This must be done quickly and without interrupting the flow if possible. But it is better to stop the whole class and get a better start than to struggle on for 3 verses and have it be uncomfortable for everyone. The front bench tenor person can say something to the whole class like a little slower or a little faster or watch the leader or whatever will help. So those are good words. If the person who's leading does not feel confident in her leading or in knowing what to do exactly, we often sometimes fall into the default procedure. And that is sort of when the leader just continues to beat time. And so we repeat the notes, and we sing the first verse, and repeat, and we sing. At the Coleman County Convention, and most of you know roughly where Coleman is from here, it's a great center of Sacred Harp singing. For a while was the base of the Sacred Harp Publishing Company when Miss Ruth Benson Edwards was living. At the Coleman County Convention some years ago, there was a fellow who belonged to an older Sacred Harp family. His grandfather was a singer, and so he was just learning Sacred Harp, and he had fastened on the song 40, Lennox. And if you're familiar with that song, you need to look at it, but let's just say that he would fall into that default procedure. So he would just stand there and smile, and the class would sing, and he would send them right back and repeat the notes, which is fine, and I think most leaders would do that. And then we would sing the first verse, and get to the end, and he would just keep beating his hand, and we'd go back and repeat the first verse. And then we would sing the second verse, and repeat it, and we'd sing the third verse, and repeat it. He did that for several years in a row. And unfortunately, we didn't have, maybe at that time, a Terry Wooden or Henry Guthrie there to say, which verses did you want to sing? And did you want to repeat those or something? If they knew that that was a tendency. But that default procedure of just continuing is the easiest thing to do. That requires to actually stop the class and ask them to do different. It requires an act of will. And so some people don't feel assertive enough to do that. About the issue of multiple verses, the Chicago group of singers used to publish a newsletter, the Chicago newsletter. And they ran a column in it for some months running called Miss Grace Notes. And this was like, are many of you familiar with Miss Manners? In the paper, it's sort of that. It's a takeoff on that kind of thing. And it was fun. A way of humorously inserting some little points about how to do right at singers or how to react when certain things happen. Well, I was intrigued by that, and I actually ended up ghostwriting a couple of those, including this one. So here you do the Dear Miss. Dear Miss Grace Notes, my favorite song has several verses, and when I lead it, I hate to leave any of them out. Lately at conventions, I have noticed that some people seem to be irritated when others sing all the verses to a song and take all the repeats. I thought everyone was supposed to respect the leader's right to sing whatever and however he or she wants. Gentle singer. Miss Grace Notes sympathizes with your feelings. While going about her chores, she often adds multiple repeats to her favorite songs. She nevertheless recognizes that such indulgences on her own time might be inappropriate in group situations. If you were talking about 3 verses to a short song, a repeat on the last, why then we have no issue here. But Miss Grace Notes guesses that you have something more. Sacred Harp singing, as your question suggests, is a democratic institution. The leader's space, however, should not be confused with the Senate floor in filibuster. Miss Grace Notes agrees that as the leader, you have the right to set the way the song is to proceed, but she will not tell you that you can make everyone like it. Just as the class has the responsibility to follow the leader's choice and direction, the leader has a responsibility not to induce tedium. Convention etiquette is based on practical considerations and simple courtesy. Sympathizing heart. If all verses are sung to every song, each with repeats, we will be singing until midnight, and by then everyone will be singing bass. Similarly, there is a place for a 6-page anthem sung with both notes and words. Your shower stall, perhaps, on a Friday evening, or in the car on your way to an out-of-town session. If you launch into such at a large all-day singing, you should do so with the realization that you will have displaced 2 or 3 other leaders and exhausted the charity of your acquaintance. I mean, isn't this fun to? And, you know, as I did this thing, it was fun to sort of take the stance of being wickedly correct. You know? Miss Grace Noakes has always believed that one of the characteristics of a good leader, along with sureness, presence, time, and such, is a sense of what the class of singers wants, and to what it will cheerfully give its assent. Sometimes that may mean singing an extra verse, or in rare instances, taking another repeat. Seasoning in both the leader's space and the singer's chair will lead to a sense of when to take such a liberty. In the meantime, you are encouraged to follow the pattern of experienced leaders you admire. See what boundaries they observe and stay well within their good example. A final distinction then. Someone set for the gallows the following day will no doubt be indulged by the group in a request to have all 5 verses to his favorite song sung with repeats on each verse. Anyone else making such a stand at a crowded convention should not be surprised to see a noose materialize midway through.
They had a singing school, and I remember the first note ringing out in the class, and I thought, this is definitely all right, because these folks, they had it. It was beautiful. But as time went on, they called up a leader, and he had his song book, and he got up into the square with great flourish, and he popped this book down, you know, you could just hear it resound out. And then he began to beat time, something like this. And I will never forget, I was like, it just reminded, I said, it's like a free-range chicken. And all the birds that were in the last lesson, they just flown right in there. My mouth was gaping so wide. So yes, a minimum amount of movement. It doesn't take, but communication is the most important thing that you can do in the square. You need the class to sing with you, and all you need, you know, is your arm. And I want to say something. We pick up habits sometimes because once we get so experienced, oftentimes we add a little something or something. But, you know, I've learned over the years, it's like, okay, just move it back to simplicity. Always keep your wrist straight. I don't care whether you lead with your palm down or your palm open this way or just straight up and down. Whatever you do, just don't let there be any flapping. Okay? Because it communicates 2 different times to the class. When you're doing this, then see how the time is different from what my arm's doing and what my wrist is doing. And it can be very confusing to the class. So you have people singing in 2 different, and at that point, what I do when I get confused is I either stop singing or I start singing with the front row tenor because they can see the person's mouth moving, and I know which time they actually want me to sing in. You know, so it's like I stop. But that's one of the worst possible things that could happen is when the class stops paying attention to the leader and they start paying attention to some other element in the room. But I mean, you want to be able to sing a song with every leader who's leading, and so you want to do your absolute best. But sometimes if a leader is not communicating effectively, then you have to go on with something else. All right, you're just demonstrating.
Hear from you all, like Judy, thinking back to when you were a child, I suppose, but through to thinking back to when you were a new leader, how did you examine a song that you wanted to lead? What did you look at? What did you think about as you were preparing to lead a new song maybe that you've never done?
I had lots of questions, and fortunately I was surrounded by people I could call. Shelby Shepherd was one I leaned on regularly. Judy, I still, we're in a hotel room somewhere. It's like, Judy, I want to lead this, and she'll just make me sing it over and over again. But some of the things that I used to look at when I was a very young singer, because I realized after listening to the CDs and just picking one that I liked, it might not have always been the best idea, because sometimes what we like is very complicated. So I learned pretty quickly, okay, let's use the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid. So if the less black on the page, the better for me. But it might have been, it might be something different for you. You do want to pick a song or choose a song that appeals to you in some way, whether it's the poetry or the melody. But if it's something that's complicated beyond your experience, then maybe choose something down a little bit. Any commentary on that?
Oh, it was very simple for me. My grandpa usually chose the song that I was going to lead. But he would work with me. When I was a child leading, we learned by rote and didn't try to all to be good. So he would sit right in front of me. I followed his example. And he would usually pick songs for me to lead, and not necessarily the most simple one either. Turn to page 451, I believe. 450. It's good thing. Well, I'll let 451 too, but Elder was one of the songs that I heard when I was just so young. He worked with me for a long time until he felt I was ready to lead this. Of course, he was still sitting right in front of me when I did. But this is not something that a child, 6, 7 years old, would choose to lead on their own. Typically. It's a little bit difficult to read. The little comma looking thing above? Yes. That's to emphasis on that note. Because you see that's, let's see, compound time coming from a bird's eye. That's an upbeat. And one of those typically unexample things. But there's instruction to accent that. They start at 7.5 minutes. So it's similar to accent.
Apparently not, but then there's a rest after it. There's so much going on in those two measures that, yeah.
But that is an emphasis on that note. And you recall. And then, of course, we got the
Aww.
And then I'm gonna do
The words,
But I
the
want
words
you.
of this song, the words of this song or the poetry pretty much tells you how to sing it.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Slow and quick.
This song, and I suppose one reason they are all chosen. The music and the poetry are so, what's the word I want to use?
Closely aligned.
They match, yeah, they bond. They're, you sing a song, you can see the stream. You can, and or rushing water, or mild or rude. You can hear that, you can feel it. This is a neat little song, but it's not very easy to sing. And it's one of the, what is it, word painting. It just does. This is one of those songs that definitely uses word painting.
Now, one important thing you said was about your grandfather working with you. He didn't just say, okay, do this, you're going to lead this song. So practice. Practice. The more confident you feel with a piece of music, the better you're going to be able to lead the class. Once you know the song well yourself and you can lead it, and practice beating time. Don't just practice singing the notes and practice singing the words. That's very important. Please do that. But also practice beating your time and practice beating time and bringing in the 4 parts. Most rooms have 4 walls. Or if you want to bring a couch and bring in the lamp, bring in the couch, bring in the love seat and the easy chair. Whatever, bring in your 4 parts if there are 4 parts involved. And the piece, well, there's usually 4 parts involved in a piece of music. But if you're, say for instance, learning to lead or practicing, learning to lead a fuguing tune, then, go ahead and practice bringing in parts. The more confident you are with a piece, then you're going to be able to hold the class together. Why did you say that? Any questions? Yes.
How important is it to bring in the separate parts in the future?
Okay. It's more important that you communicate. This is me. Since you asked me, it's more important that you communicate to the first part, or at least the first 2 parts, but at the very least, the first part. Say, for instance, if the bass comes in first, if you bring the bass in and then turn back around to the tenor, and especially important if the tenor is coming in next, then great. If it's a song that's complicated, say like Morgan, where you have something like that going, if you're not if you're not there yet, make sure you bring in the first part of the fugue and then work on the rest. But whatever you do, just don't stop beating time. Okay. So bring in the first part.
The most important thing is to keep your time. If you don't feel comfortable, turn to them. At least give them a look.
Bring in the altos that way.
At least do that. I mean, you don't have to walk around the square like I do. You can stand in one spot. That's fine.
So I remember you saying several years ago, don't bow to the...
No, don't do this. Don't serve hors d'oeuvres.
Looking for the difference.
And if you was in the class yesterday, you know how I feel about dropping your book to the floor. If you don't need your book, simply walk to the front and somebody will take it, okay? For goodness sakes, whatever you do, if this will scare you out of your chair, if you're up there and you drop that book, it's just not necessary. You have? I have. I've seen it many a time. And it is not a pretty sight to me. It unnerves everybody. It does, it does. And you also know my theory on your appearance in the square and your conduct in the square. I think you should be upright, shoulders back. When you start a song, with your hand up. Now I know that you've had several different teachers. Some will allude to part of it, starting your time. It's all right to start it from the bottom, but my theory of it is no. You be a measure down and up. A measure is either full of breast or nose. And why would you leave part of it and do another?
If you've got a bird's eye out in the middle of the song, let me think of one right quick. Somebody tell me where one is.
34 on the top.
How much?
34 on the top.
34 on the top. Once you get to that, you get through with that bird's eye. Now, where y'all say the tenor was? Y'all all singing tenor, right? Okay, y'all singing terrible. I mean treble. Okay. But now, if the leader will hold that, and if he'll bring his hand down while he's wanting it held, and then when he's ready to come up, bring his hand up and sing the half note, it will help. Let's sing that through that bird's eye. Oh, solo fa. And we'll all do it together now. Let's do it one more time. What did you start saying?
I said we may be saying something different, repeating something. David, how do you do it? Like we did?
Slow it down. Just go down. You don't just go down there and hold it. Bring it down.
Bring it down gradually.
You could hold it up here for a minute,
Yeah.
and then come down, and then pick up your regular rhythm going out. Let's do it again. Oh, so.
That stops your time. In fact, that's the only thing that stops time once you start, except the end of the song. Okay? Rest, anything else in the song, you keep time. Unless you come to the bird's eye. Time stops at that bird's eye. But with writ, that means slowly. So you don't stop your time, you just slow it down.
Oh, I see. Because I've seen people who they just hold that.
Just do it very slowly after that burns out. That quarter note gets quarter beat, and then you slow it down.
I'm sure that last one you slow as well.
Yeah. It's pretty much at the end of the song, as I understand it, from the word written all the way to the end. Now, if you're going to repeat, notice dotted quarter, pick up the bass again quickly, and then the second ending is try it again.
Words or
Try the notes again.
notes? Officers are elected, then the ranger committee starts calling out the leaders. We touched on this last night, or sometime my week's gone together. If it's a small singing, and let the leader lead two songs together. First of all, that cuts down confusion. This one coming up, and then this one sitting down and whatever. And you know, I can use myself as an example. It'd be better for me to lead 2 or 3 songs, as difficult as I have to get up, than it is to lead me one song, sit down, and 15 minutes later call me again. Now, the reasoning for that is, when you type up your minutes, the book has gotten so big in there. How many of you read your minute books? I do. Okay. That it takes up too much space on your minutes, and it cuts down confusion in your class to lead 2 songs. At the same token, if we were at a singing at Holly Springs this year, and the church was full, and they said, we'll lead 2 songs. At the end of the day, as it turned out, everybody led 2 songs, and they led every verse of every song. Now, when I was growing up, and by the end of the day, they couldn't get to all of the leaders. You're an adult. You need to use a little common sense. And that you can look around and you see this church is full of leaders, that you realize that there's not going to be time for everybody to get to lead. Courtesy, common courtesy, or to dictate to you to sing 1 song, 1 verse, and repeat it. Now, we were brought up that you did the notes and you repeated the notes if it has a repeat sign there, and you sung 1 verse. And you've heard me say this week, 358, Marilla's Lesson, as well as all of us know that song. We didn't even know how to sing verse number 2, or that it was even a verse 2. Somebody got up and called that song and then said, let's sing verse number 2. Well, you've never seen such shuffling of books in your life. Because we didn't know verse 2.
Seating. We had a particularly unfortunate thing happen to us, I think, at this year's Thursday session of the National. Although you weren't there, we can't blame you for it. Yeah. We really had a kind of a whipsaw effect going that day. We hadn't pulled the class in tight enough, and it's a big room, it's a big wide room, and the pews are stationary there. But so, and on the bass class, as I remember it, we pretty much had singers who were just there looking at their books the whole time and not able to look at the leader. And when that happens, aren't they, in a wide room like that, this reverberation going around, aren't they really reacting to the sound that's coming to them and then singing into it, so that there's an inevitable delay there? And besides that point, I always like to say, over the years I've been frustrated by having really wonderful folks come south to sing with us who sit there all day and sing directly. They don't want to miss a note in Edom 200 or whatever. They don't want to miss a note. And some marvelous leader that they will never get a chance to see again. Indeed, none of us may get a chance to see this leader again. And I want to say, look at her. Watch her lead. But they don't want to miss a fa for a la. You know? There's a whole world out there in front of your book. And there's so many things you can pick up if you can follow the notes, but it doesn't matter if you sing a fa instead of a la. But pick up what's going on there in the center. There'll be some wonderful lessons you can observe, and you'll see some beautiful things you might not get a chance to see again. And then you'll be able to teach a class at some point and talk about those leaders. Sometimes, even with the best intentions, we still will offend someone or create an awkward situation. And I'll tell you a little couple of stories that I told at the other camp about that. Probably back in the 70s, I was attending the Coleman County Courthouse singing, and that was still a really big singing. And I'd taken a break and was out in the hallway and just came back into the main hall. And there was a mature singer before us who sort of maybe even at that point had a reputation for being a little testy, whose bias seemed to be that the class was always a little unruly. Okay, so he had called 174 Petersburg. So it It isn't one of my favorite songs, so I just decided to stand back and watch. And he started leading that song. And immediately, he had to calm him down. Watch the leader. And it was the sermon. And yet what I saw was his voice was doing one thing and his hands were doing another. I can't remember now what it was exactly. I think he was beating, it's 2/4, and I think he was beating one beat, or maybe whatever it was. The class was trying to help, but they were reading the wrong signal. Well, when that happened then, and he just pitched a little tirade. Yeah. Well, this time around, I guess they all followed his voice instead of his arm, and so we got through it. Well, and some of you may know who this singer is, or let's not tell. Let's just use it as an example. More recently, I was at a singing where this person came before us to lead, and I'm extremely fond of this person. Had lunch with him that day, sat by him for a while, but I also sort of knew the potential for some drama was there. And so in the afternoon, when he got up to lead, he had his coat on, and he'd already led a beautiful lesson in the morning, and his coat was kind of annoying him or whatever, and so they'd already sounded the pitch, and he did a little movement like this to get his coat back, and two young fellows over there on the side who were not from that community jumped in to start singing. And they fell right into the trap. He said, just a minute now. Wait a minute now, he said. He said, wait a minute now. When I'm off the floor, y'all will sing it like you want to. And now he's talking to the whole bunch and not to these two, this unruly crowd. He said, Uncle Tom Denson said that when you're on the floor, you're in charge. And then evidently feeling like he whipped him back into shape. You know, that probably made his day. To know that he had whipped this bunch back into shape, went on and led a beautiful lesson. So, to that point, sometimes even when you're trying so hard to help, like those two young men were, they were ready right there to spring into action, and then they just misread the signal. I'm getting to the end of what I would want to tell you, and then I'll open it to questions and comments. But we're way early. But let me say this one thing overall. If I had to give you one piece of advice or counsel, even about the classes especially about the classes you'll be having here for the rest of the week, it would be this. You will probably hear a good bit of always do this or never do that. Probably a good guideline, and in most cases, probably true. But mix that in with your own observations of good singers that you admire, good traditional singers, and season the whole thing with common sense, as always. Some circumstances may be different. Let's sing 425. Pitch, please, sir, once again. Fasola. Ah. does. The class is compliant. It wants to help. It wants you to be successful. It will do what you're asking it to do if you'll only make your signals clear. And even though you had no idea what you were going to be singing and didn't know the words I'm making up to make you sing, now, I couldn't do that with Heavenly Vision or Bear Creek. You all know that, but you followed along, and the class always will. The point there is, if you can make clear your intent to them, with your voice, with your body, with your arms, they'll come along with you. We get in trouble when someone doesn't. And I'm now thinking of additional things I can say. There's always a risk of this. I may run over my time, David. But bringing in the parts. And I'm not sure exactly what the other teachers will be telling you about this. There's a good reason for bringing in the parts, motioning. When we're all, or when any of us, I guess, are sight reading, it's helpful for the leader to let you know that if you're halfway lost about which measure exactly am I in, then now is my entrance. So there's a practical reason for that. But for the most part, and you know this already, most of you do, if you're at a good singer, you could have a dungeon up here. And the class with this. I mean, you have this, let's say you're at a big singer, you have this big alto section behind you just blowing. Here, just try denying them their entrance. They don't have to have the point. So why do we do that? Why do we do it? For me, it's a demonstration to the class, to whatever audience may be there, to you yourself. It's a demonstration of your thorough engagement with the music, with the song, with the lesson. And it's beside that a beautiful thing to see. Now, as a practical point of view, the bass has the entrance on what, 90-something% of the songs you know. So if you're going to repeat that, then they need you to indicate to them. Okay, that we can take for granted. But beyond that, do we need to point out the other parts? Again, if you are sitting there singing, it's really great, isn't it, to have that communion with the leader. When they turn to you, when they know what you're doing. And especially when you're doing special things. In treble, when you're asked to go in high, or to bass, a surge over here. It's fun, it's communicative for the leader to respond to that. Sacred Harp is a visual spectacle, along with all the audio stuff, right? I mean, I know for the altos, it's not the same visual spectacle. It's a different yeah. So, and I think I've loved seeing those leaders over the years. And I'm lined up for a session tomorrow afternoon. I'll talk about some of those individual leaders and what they do, especially in terms of just a little bit about bringing in the parts. But yeah, I think that's a wonderful part of our tradition. We don't have to do plenty of good singers. And those of you who've been to these things know this. You've seen good traditional singers will stand right here and lead, and they might bring the bass in, and that's all they do, and that's fine. You know, I'm not criticizing that, and surely you aren't either. But how wonderful to see someone else who can take it beyond that and move around the square. A beautiful thing to see. Well, another little story. I did that same little exercise at the All California Convention when it was meeting in LA some years ago. And we did that same thing. I had them to sing 425, and I led them into We Will Walk the Golden Street in the New Jerusalem. Fine, I made the same point I made before, that see how easy it is, and not that I was advocating, doing that, making up your own verses as you go, but just to make a point about how easy it is as a leader if you really know the keys to do something. If you have an assertive personality at all, how you can make that happen. And a couple of years after that, I attended the Midwest Convention in Illinois Hall in Chicago, and one of the people who had attended that session, which was California, out in LA was there, and she got up and led 425. And when they finished singing the words, she said, and now let's sing the song the way they sing it in the oral tradition in the South. We will walk the golden streets in the New Jerusalem. And as I said, sometimes it's almost scary how quickly tradition can set in. There was something special, I think most of us could say, about the two-song lesson. And traditionally, well, let's back up a little and say that, and I'm getting into some territory we're going to talk about tomorrow, but that's fine. In the old days, let's say, when there were way too many good singers to have them all lead, and many of them would certainly have felt that it was not their place or even right to do so, their privilege to do so, yes, but they might have sung for 30 minutes at a time, 20 minutes at a time, or whatever, or certainly 3 or 4 songs, but especially when you had the two. That was just the thing that carried through for decades in the South. And even at large singings, when it meant that a good many good singers would not be able either to sing at all or to sing twice in a weekend, it was still observed. It was sacrosanct. And what was special about it? Well, they tended to try to find, the ideal was to find songs that were companionable, thematically, possibly tune-wise, meter, certainly major and minor. Many times when I first started singing, a singer would lead a song and then say, now I want to change music. Go from major to minor, or minor to major. So they were nodding at that tradition, even as they were waving it, in this case. And people tended to try to find songs that were companionable in some way, to make a point. And I think we lost a little bit there. Now, did we gain something probably much more important? I think we did.
Go back to the two-song lesson.
Yeah.
Now, we still do that in some of the smaller singings
Sure.
in the South. But I've noticed that it's very uncommon, if done at all, at the northern singings. That's my essentially within minutes. And I think it would be a good thing to, and what we do generally is look at the size of the class. And we may start out singing 2 and go with 2-song lessons all day. Sometimes people will come and have to do 1. But I think it's something we should maybe start doing more of, rather than just round. I see some singers where they round robin 3 or 4 times.
Exactly.
And
That's what we're
not nearly as satisfying. So we ought to maybe try that.
Well, I'll just go ahead and say now that I think that the practice of routinely singing just one, or holding just one, really started with the National Convention and Hugh McGraw, 1980. I thought that it was the Coleman County Convention. But when I look back at the minutes, I found that didn't hold up. What I did see is that sometimes at the big conventions, they would have the first day where you would sing, just the same way, and then the second day, so after lunch, maybe, after lunch on the second day, then they would maybe say, now just one from each singer, and go through the listing that way. But at the National Convention, faced with so many singers in those first years that the National was held, there were just huge numbers of singers there. And that's where it started, and happened so effectively, and it's so democratic that in giving everyone an opportunity, or virtually everyone. I mean, the day before yesterday at Liberty, we managed 177 leaders in 93 songs, which obviously meant carrying out 2s and 3s and so on to get through. But that's when you had just 2-song lessons, it really put that number down. If we have time, do we? We do. Yes. I mentioned one more thing, and that is the thing that we touched on in the Miss Grace Phillips thing, which is that the additional repeats. Let me just give you a little perspective on that. In the old days, when Bob Denson and George Woodard were still alive, Jeff, you may, or Gene, you may remember others who did this, who fairly routinely sent the class back through a second repeat. Otherwise, you didn't see that much. It was sort of unheard of to do that. And his Uncle Bob Denson, he was up here, and he's crying, as he always did when he left. He's up here without a book. Somebody who's, in his 70s and 80s now, and he's crying and mopping his face, and he's going to send you back. Well, who's going to deny him that? Nobody. And George Woodard, this really galvanizing, a real tall, big man, and big booming voice, and quaking voice, and real dramatic leading style. He could get away with that. It typically wasn't done that much. Now, up in your area, Unisani and Coy and Barrett, who would started doing that a little more. But now here's what happened. Now, you mentioned how quickly tradition sets in, Singers from the North came down and saw that and said, oh, well, that's how that works. That's kind of neat. So they get up, next time, and they'll send a repeat, and let's just do that again. It was the first thing you know. And then the really odd thing was that not only did people routinely from outside the South doing it, people who before would have never thought of doing that. And you could see they're almost sheepish, kind of grinning, they almost go over and ask. It was almost like a badge of honor. If you didn't get a second repeat, then you weren't, anything. You just hadn't done it. But and then that sort of passed. That just sort of happened. And it's still, from my point of view, as I said before, you have a wonderful leader leading 216. Let's go for it. Go for the second repeat. But let's just keep it moderation, keep it balanced. As I said, season it with common sense and so on.
You can pretty much tell if the class wants.
If the class wants. And just like Miss Grayson said,
You can tell.
Oh, the delights of heavenly joys, the glories of the place, where Jesus sheds surprises, streams of Jesus sheds surprises, streams of Jesus sheds power where Jesus sheds surprises, streams of His overflowing grace, sweet majesty and awful love, His smiling on His brow, and all the glorious cross of glory, and all the glorious ranks above, and humble distance power, and all the glorious ranks above, and humble distance bow. Sweet majesty and awful love, His smiling on His brow, and all the glorious cross of glory, and all the glorious ranks above, and humble distance power, and all the glorious ranks above, and humble distance bow.
Frank, I will, there are a couple of things I appreciate about what you did there. First of all, even if you missed bringing in a part or if you turned around to the front, you kept beating your time. You didn't say, oh no, wait a minute, let's say. You just kept your rhythm and your time it was perfect, very even. The other thing, I like the way you beat time out to the side so that alto, you're not beating to the bass, you're right in there where the alto, so that is a key element of communication. You like the class to be able to see, in the altos we get so little attention back there, all of a sudden. And it's nice that you beat out to the side enough so that even people in the alto section can see what you're doing, and they don't have to look so hard to see your jaw moving to see what word you're on. So, all right, and Judy.
Good job.
All right.
I'll just have to practice it.
Yeah, practice your parts. Because you had a little confusion about where you're supposed to go. You did a good job in keeping your time. And it doesn't matter if you turn to the basis and the treble starts singing.
Is there a trick, like if the basses and the trebles come in at the same time,
so excited to lead at Antioch Church on New Year's Eve. And I said, oh, I want to do 546. That is just the best song. And I worked on it. But you know, so many songs have that bass lead. And I was so excited. I practiced, and I had gotten up, and I was a little bit nervous because it was my first time leading this song. And I got through the entire song and repeated on, I believe, the notes and the words, bringing in the bass verse. And they didn't say a word. The treble, of course, have the lead on that song. And no one said it. They sang the song, and it was beautiful, and I thought it had gone excellently. And then my very good friend Joan Aldrich leaned over and said, who comes in first on that? Kicked myself for months and months, but I never stopped beating time. Of course, that's because I thought I was right, so that helps. All right, next.
Yeah, I love 178, but every time I read it, I think I'm trying to go too fast, or I don't know. Maybe I don't lead a lot of 3-2 songs, but I would like to hear about this song as I'm trying to read it. And I've got a funny story about page turning. We were here 3 years ago with the TV crew, and one of my favorite songs is Loving Jesus, but I learned it out of Cooper book, which is on one page. And so when I got up with Dan Britton to read it in the film was shooting, I totally didn't turn the page. And I got confused because I didn't think I had to turn the page. So if you watch that TV show again, you'll see how totally confused I am. But luckily Dan was up there looking like he knew what he was doing. So, anyway, 178. So on 3-2, it's just, but slow.
Three beats.
3 beats, okay. So I do it incorrectly when I usually do 3, so it's okay.
3. 1,
2, and all the way up. Okay, I'm gonna have to follow some of these people to get that.
Okay.
Get
Front
that.
bench.
Even though I'm supposed to be leading. Okay.
And verses.
Yeah, that's fine, I guess, because we want to get around, so, yeah.
Well, we won't get around, but we'll get
Yeah, well, as best we can, the
Yeah.
first verse, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay, but I can't keep the song, so somebody's going to do that.
whatever else happens before that, they're supposed to be quiet. That's the rest. And then when your arm
May
comes
have to just
up,
be-
that's when they're supposed to start singing.
Okay,
Okay?
all right.
So you're gonna find.
All right, okay. Let's try it again.
Words, huh? Yeah, words.
Yeah, words.
Well, I have a lot of trouble starting out too, and I'd like to try to leave Ballstown, 217. And I want an explanation for exactly what I do on that first long note, because I never know what to do. And also, I'm going to say I cannot sing the tenor, so I'm going to sing it.
Okay.
Because that's the only part I really want.
We'll let you do that tonight.
Thank you.
That first note is a whole note, it fills the measure. So it gets a downbeat and an upbeat.
So, great God.
Yes, that's
Okay.
it.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay?
And I'll try to a little not too slow. Okay.
When you're starting with a song like this, is it okay to give a little up?
Well, that's the other question is, do you start it here and go, great?
There's a number of opinions about that.
Stuart was talking about
Stuart
cut the
will
strings.
teach you a preparatory move. You know, it's kind of like, hello, get your breath. We're ready to go. I don't do that. You know, so I
So you
do
just
that.
come down, you cut the string and just come down.
But I do keep eye contact with those guys right there. They know when I'm ready to start. They can tell by looking at me that we're gonna sing now.
And there are other, movements that aren't overly exaggerated that you can make with other parts of your body. Anything that you're doing with your hand should be indicated on this page, and specifically, where the music begins, and if there is a rest at the beginning of that song, that is a part of the music. Understand? So this is why we say that you beat that rest, because it is a part of the music. So if you're doing something preparatory, just my opinion, like Judy said, there are a lot of, if you're doing something before that with your hand, then it's not written here. So you're doing something that's not on the page. Keeping eye contact is a good way of saying, okay, they see you singing, they see you getting, and they see, or, with your head, or, just some gentle movement that doesn't involve this, because this, what you're doing here should be on the page.
Also sing.
I would since she's asked to sing out, that brings it.
Yeah. No,
I want to make for you. If your voice is not suited to tenor, or you don't know the tenor part of the song you want to lead, if you can learn the first two measures of tenor and start your song, then you can go to your alto or treble or whatever.
But don't belt it out.
But if you can start your songs, your voice should be the voice that's heard when you start singing. Your voice. Don't depend on these guys I mean, do, but don't. Just learn to do it yourself. Learn to start your song. Should be your voice. Whatever it is. Mine sounds horrible sometimes because it's not as strong as it used to be. So it kind of squeaks. But you're still going to hear my voice first. You understand? So if you can learn these first two measures, which is real easy because they're all solos.
Yeah. If I try to do that now, I'll fall apart by the time
Well,
I get
that's okay.
No, I'm just saying, I would like, but I will try to do that in the future.
If you're going to sing
Yeah, okay.
another part from the square, at least learn the first couple of measures so you can start your song. Okay? Did I say that? Okay. All right. Good.
And this song is easy because the tenor only has that one note.
Okay.
Just spend one day with
I know you have a little trouble with your book. Getting from one page to the other, it's a pretty big book to try to hold like that. Do you ever leave without your book? My daddy will have a fit, he hears me say this.
We won't tell them.
Yeah, but it's on tape. It's on tape. One thing that might help you, if you could learn the notes and words without having to look at the book while you're reading it, so that you're not, it kind of messes your time up a little bit when you're having to deal with this big book. It's the only thing.
I memorize this piece, is what you're saying.
Great job. Or maybe if you could print you a copy. I know Velton Schaefer is a lifetime Sacred Heart singer from West Alabama. And he has some of his favorite songs, and he's run off on a piece of paper. And when he gets up to lead, all he's got to hold is that paper. He doesn't have to hold this big book. So you might think about that.
He also has just a piece of.
Yeah, he just got that.
About 30, 40 pages, he'll show up in front with a piece of book.
That's good.
Oh, yeah.
Good job, guys.
Good job. Harp, do I want to keep going or do I want to stop? So those were a couple things. You're starting and you're starting. I'm stopping. And I know that this is a new song for you, and so good job keeping your tempo. But remember what happens, guys, when you don't start your song, you are giving the class all the power. The front bench in particular, and Cheyenne could tell you stories, but don't. People just, there are people who just love to take over your song and ascribe whatever tempo that they just have in their spirit to it. So if you're not careful and you stand there like this, they are just ready to get going with it, or to drag it into next Christmas. So, you are the authority on your lesson. So you start when you're ready to start.
I kind of wanted to pick it up more, but I figured out to ask everybody else. I started going a lot faster.
No, you're fine. Just want to just command it.
Okay.
And then, if you started too fast or too slow, then, you said when we got ready to do the words, you wanted to pick it up a little bit, and so that's what we did.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, now who wants to come up here? How about you, Stephen? Have you ever led before? Huh? All right, pick you out of something. Do you know 146? Oh, he's got him. No.
What's he got?
He hasn't got one. That's just kind of a classic something, huh?
146.
Okay, now first of all, come up here, put your hand on the back. Up there where you can see it, but you don't have to use it right.
6 inches behind your buttock.
I go back here.
And I measured about 18 inches behind your buttock. It's amazing, the flexibility. Okay, that's it. Yeah, there's really no reason for your hand to go behind your back at all. Shoulder to waist is enough. And you get, you're conserving energy. Conservation of movement, and what was it? Maximum communication, minimum of movement. That's Sam Somers, I believe. And so yeah, just, here is enough. And you're conserving energy, but you don't have to worry about what's going on.
Square's not always good.
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah, sometimes you can get in a really small building and boy, you're just giving out those work out there doing.
No, I live back there. I know what that's like. It's good to know. Thank you.
But great tempo.
Alex?
You're a good leader. What how you swing it back?
You're like stopping time at the top and stopping time at the bottom, so it's like move it, stay, move it, stay, move it, stay, move it. So just make your movements a little more fluid instead of that little chop at
I guess
the
I'm hearing,
bottom.
I must be hearing the end of the accent.
And so, keep it, and accent with your voice. That's a very important thing that you'll learn during camp, is to accent with your voice and not with your body. So you don't want accent here and accent there. So just keep your time moving unless there's something there stopping time, like a tomato or something else, and
Okay, I think I'm trying to hear I'm hearing the end of the accent. That's what I was doing. The other question?
Oh,
if your shoulder and your elbow is going at the same time, think about, all the people who are sitting around and the different angles from which they're viewing your body and your emotions. And so you may be communicating several different tempos. If you have wrist action as well as elbow action and shoulder action. So there is anything like that's going on. The altos may be singing a step behind the tenor and all the rest. So just something to think about.
So I hope you understand that when I get up here, I'm not fussing at you. My tone of voice makes you think I am. But I'm not fussing at you. I just want you to do better, okay?